Down on calling the Paris Climate Summit a rejection of terror. Roll tape.
We have come to Paris to show our resolve. What greater rejection of those who would tear down our world than marshaling our best efforts to save it?
Senator James Inhofe is with us, Republican, Oklahoma. He is, I guess you would call the primary climate change skeptic in the Senate. I think you'll accept that label, Senator. I think you would.
Well, I think, Stuart, actually, in the beginning, I was the only one. That's back around the turn of the century. And it was pretty lonely out there, I'll tell you.
Now, the president, the president's going to commit America to doing all kinds of things to mitigate climate change and spending all kinds of taxpayer money. He's going to Paris, he's there, he's going to make that agreement. Can you reverse it? Can you stage a revolt in the Senate and say, no, we're not going to do that?
No, see, people don't understand. I was over there back during Copenhagen, and people think that the president says something in the United States and it can automatically happen. We'd have to appropriate money, and we're not going to do it. And by the way, you've got to keep in mind that the public's on our side now. I can remember in the beginning, Stuart, that it was about the #1 or #2 issue when global warming. And now it's 15 out of 15 in the last Gallup poll. So the public has caught on. They know it's going to cost. They're most concerned about, in fact, just yesterday they came out with a Fox News poll yesterday said that 97% of Americans don't care about global warming when stacked against terrorism, immigration, health care, and the economy. So they have lost that battle. Now, let's keep in mind also, it was a shock to the president of France when John Kerry on November 11th made the statement that we're not going to be doing anything. He specifically said, we'll not deliver a treaty that's legally binding on any countries. Well, when the president of France, Francois Hollande, heard that, he said that he must have heard it wrong. Because his statement was, if we're not able to do something that's binding, why are we meeting? So, you know, they're having a good time over there, and they may run out of some of the festivities, but it's we've been told all year what's going to happen there, and it's not going to happen.
A lot of people think that the president is going to sign a treaty over there, a climate change treaty. That's not the case. Because if it was a treaty, he'd have to bring it back, and the Senate would have to pass it. What is it? I think you can have two-thirds vote to pass it.
It would take 2/3 to confirm that action should he have a treaty. And that's the reason that finally, I think, John Kerry, knowing he was just 2 weeks away from this meeting, he better set it up and make sure people know that there's not going to be anything binding. So, and that's been for the last year. We've been told that we're going to have something binding, and the great leadership, and this is of course, what the president wants out of his presidency. So when you stop and you think about the things he said in the opening speech, and I'm sure you've played a lot of it because I've seen you do a couple of those, Stuart, he talks about the fact that we're going to have a 26 to 28% reduction in CO2 emissions by 2025. That isn't going to happen. I chair the committee that has jurisdiction over the Environmental Protection Agency. We asked them to come before us, since we have their jurisdiction, and testify how he's going to do this. They refused to come. I think, Stuart, this is the first time in my career I can remember, it may be the first time ever, that the government agency that is under the jurisdiction of a committee refused to testify. So they know they can't do it to start with. You know, one last thing I want to mention. Remember Jacques Chirac, way back in the turn of the century, when he talked about this and how important this was, he said, this is the first step for authentic global governance. And then Margot Wallström, she was the EU gal, she said it's leveling the playing field for big business worldwide. That was what it was all about. That's 15 years ago. It's true today.
Senator James Inhofe, Republican, Oklahoma. Thanks very much for joining us, sir. Much obliged to you.
Thank you, Stuart.
Yes, sir.